Today, for the first of our Unbound Histories, we're going to take a look at Stonehenge, but rather than just looking at the stones, which is what probably 95% of books and videos do, and we will see the stones, but we're going to look at the wider context of a landscape, because the more I see ancient sites, the more I see it as an interaction with the landscape. They didn't build them because they were near, they built them because they were in the right place. I remember going to Coldham Long Barrow in Kent, and when you stand at what was the door to the Long Barrow and look down the valley, apart from a few barns, you get a feeling that their final resting place was this beautiful spot, and maybe you get a appreciation of why they picked that particular place. Well, today we're at Stonehenge, Salisbury Plain, rolling gentle hills, fields going off into the distance, and it's almost impossible to see signs of the Stone Age here. Here we're walking down an old path that's been here for certainly many hundreds of years, that leads directly to Stonehenge and to the A Road. I picked this route because as you walk along these fields on this rather icy and treacherous path, you see a world devoid of modern structures, devoid of modern humanity. And if you turn around, there's a barn. But you look down here and you see rolling grassy fields. Imagine there's no fences and this is just a dirt track. And it's not a world away from what they first experienced. But the history of Stonehenge doesn't really start with the stones. And it doesn't end with the stones. Within about 2 miles in every direction, you have Stonehenge, you have Woodhenge, you have 2 other henges that are rarely visited, you have probably 50 burial mounds, and you have cursuses. There's 2 of them here. We'll get to those in a while, but there's a lot more here than just Stonehenge. And really, the story starts 8000 BC. 8000 BC, this is wild, rugged, probably chilly like it was this day that I walked up this path. And hunter-gatherers strolling across look at the horizon and they make an observation that was probably lost in time until about 20 years ago, when there was an archaeological dig the other side of the A Road, and they found the scarring in the rock where the glaciers had rolled over this land at the end of the last ice age. Today, with grassy soil everywhere, you can't quite see it, but this was a natural temple. This was an alignment of the earth with the sun and the sky. If you're a hunter-gatherer, you don't have maths as we know it, you don't have science and history and academia of today, but what you do have is an appreciation of the earth, the sky, and how they join. The stars, unobscured by street lights, and the rising and setting sun, and a movement of that rising and setting sun across the horizon during the course of the year. And on a high point in this land stood a tree, and somebody, seeing that tree and understanding the alignment of the ground with the sunrise, decided to place a pole right next to it. So that's where the tree was, and here were 3 poles, and these poles were trees that had been cut down and prepared, gone for thousands of years, probably gone before Stonehenge, but it's the oldest monument in Western Europe. And it's really, for me, where the story begins, with these boring, they look like rubber hubcaps on the ground, just across the fence from Stonehenge. Most visitors don't even see them. But this tells you why the place was chosen and why the wider landscape was more important than just the henge. So a henge is a circle with a ditch around it and probably stones inside of that. It doesn't have to be made of stone. And there in the distance you can see Stonehenge just up on that little bump in the hill. Over time, Stonehenge grew in significance and importance, and so did the landscape around it. Because what came first, chicken or egg? You see all the burials. Were the burials there before or at the same time or later? Well, a little bit of both. But this significance of this little spot where earth touches sky, where the world aligns with the sunrise and sunset, over thousands of years led to a complicated series of, you could call them temples, let's call them henges. There you've got Stonehenge in the distance. Just to the left there you have a ridge, and along that is King's Ridge. There's about 5 or 6 burials there. We've just passed the cursus, where there's dozens of burial mounds. A cursus is a long rectangular strip of land surrounded by a ditch and a mound, and in the middle of that are burials. And running off from Stonehenge, sort of diagonally across that hill away from us, and curving its way up the hill you can see there, is the avenue, a processional avenue, almost lost to time, but you could still see it. As you stand and look over the field from Stonehenge, you can see the avenue, the processional avenue, and also the logistical avenue. It leads down to the river, and also Woodhenge, which was the living twin of Stonehenge. And next to that lived the builders of Stonehenge. Because Stonehenge evolved over a long time. It wasn't just built in one single move, but there's series of stones and the circles were built up over time. And there, standing alone, proud from the rest of Stonehenge, you can see the heel stone. It really like a gun sight looking through the Sarsens at the sunrise. Here there's 5 large mounds on the small hillock opposite Stonehenge, and clearly by this point there was an understanding of the significance of this site and a growing ceremonial practice. As you stand here you can see Stonehenge, the world famous iconic structure, but here it's the sunrise against these stones in the morning that explains its presence here. So if this is an understanding of where the sun sets and sun rises, like an observatory where you can stand and celebrate the coming and the leaving of the sun during the year. I always wonder why there's crows here. I've never been to Stonehenge without loads of crows in the surrounding area. Here's the heel stone, but just across behind those trees is Woodhenge. Today it's just a few concrete pillars, but in its day it was a significant temple built of wood, like a complicated version of Stonehenge made of wood. And a growing consensus seems to be that if stone is for the dead, wood is for the living. And this is right next to Durrington Walls. Today, Durrington Walls is just a plain depression. It looks like nothing. It could be any field wherever you go. But actually, this little boring depression here isn't insignificant. This is where the builders of Stonehenge lived. So just there, you can just about make out the bowl of the hill where the mound's been built up around it, and the builders of Stonehenge lived here for probably 1,000 years, and there's remains of houses, there's remains of another henge, and a significant site where it seems people came from around Europe to visit Stonehenge, much as they do today, but with a very different understanding of the significance of the location. And at the far end of the avenue was this tiny twin henge, one of stone and one of wood, lost for millennia. You find it in the middle of a housing estate where people sit in their front gardens looking at you, wondering why on earth you're looking at that little mound in the middle of their housing estate. And this is actually the last henge we're visiting today, Bulford Henge, which was down by the River Avon back then. So I guess my point in this video is, although we will talk about Stonehenge, Woodhenge, the Avenue, the Cuckoo Stone, Bulford Henges, and all the different elements here, really to appreciate and enjoy Stonehenge, you have to look at the landscape, which really is what it was all about. It was built here as a place where the earth met the sky, where the sunrise and sunset aligned with the ground. And the significance of that was not just understood and appreciated, but from skeletal remains we could see that people came from all round Europe in a hunter-gatherer society to build these complicated structures with stones weighing many tons and alignment with the stars, because simple as they may have been without all of modern knowledge, our ancestors had an appreciation of something we've probably lost.